program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the Eau Claire Area School Board. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
Well, hello, everyone. I think looks like all of the board is here. Superintendent Johnson is here, and Abby is here, who are probably the keys for tonight, but I think we've got everybody. Those of you who are willing and able, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As a side note, my neighbors have a flag up right outside the window, so I am in fact able to face the flag and deliver that from here in my office, I guess, as it were. Maida, are we in compliance with open meetings laws?
Yes.
Okay, if you could do a roll call for me.
Commissioner Harder?
Here.
Commissioner Lyons?
Here.
Commissioner Nordin?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Zur?
Here.
Commissioner Bika?
Here.
Commissioner Clements?
Here.
So we have a short special meeting tonight to adopt the 2021 budget. And Abby, I'll let you take it away first.
All right. Thanks, Chair Nordin. Hopefully you all can see my screen. It looks like it has shared. And so we'll jump right in tonight. So tonight is the official hearing to adopt the budget for the 2021 school year. And so you'll remember that on October 5th, there was a preliminary budget adopted. And so since then, we've had some changes and learned some things because October 15th was a big date for school districts statewide. That's the date we get a lot of information to finalize our budgets for the fiscal year. So since then, the changes that I've made, I've summarized here on this page to make it very clear for you all what changed. So removing co-curricular fees. You'll remember on October 5th, we had talked about co-curricular fees in Fund 10, and I was asked the question if we had co-curricular fees in Fund 80. And when I went back and I looked, we still did have some fees in Fund 80, so I removed those based upon the conversation that we had with the board at that point in time. So I just wanted to let you know that was a change in Fund 80, as well as since that meeting, second quarter sports at the middle schools have been confirmed that we are not going to have second quarter sports. We have an optional different program that's happening to engage our students and allow them to participate in after school activities. And so we removed the second quarter sports knowing that that wasn't going to happen. In addition, since those changes were made to Fund 80, we've had open enrollment changes that affected Fund 10 and Fund 27. We had the voucher number was certified on October 15th. Our computer aid number was certified on October 15th. Our pre-purple aid was certified on October 15th. Our equalization aid and our property tax revenue was all confirmed on October 15th. With that, our transportation was updated because if you'll remember, our transportation contract is also tied to our October 15th revenue limit analysis. And then we've added our CARES allocation and how we intend to spend those dollars. And then the technology leases have been finalized since the October 15th adoption of the budget. Oh, my screen didn't move. Oh, now it moved too many times. Sorry about that. And just a reminder of how do we spend $1 in the Eau Claire School District. And so this year, our budget reflects a 74-cent of each dollar spent on salary and benefits. 16 cents is spent on contracted services, which includes our contracted subs and also our private school support. 7 cents is spent on supplies. 2 cents is spent on insurance, debt, and other, and 1 cent is spent on capital and equipment. A little bit different breakdown this year than it has been in the past. Part of that is the debt in numbers have gone up. That's due to our technology leases. Because obviously we went one-to-one devices, and so the board had approved our support of making those costs flat for the next 5 years, and we went into lease payments, and so that's why that debt is up a bit. And then the other one that really kind of changed this year was our contracted services, and a lot of that's related to the open enrollment changes and vouchers that we learned about and were finalized on October 5th. We talk a little bit about the tax levy and how that is going to change and what that looks like for the 2021 year. And so you can see that the general fund tax levy is down $939,000 when compared to last year's tax levy. Our Fund 38 and 39 is down about $1 million, and that was a debt drop that we've talked about for the last probably year and a half, and so that was expected. And then our Fund 80 is also down, mostly because our first and second quarter sports aren't planned to happen, and those costs would be greatly reduced. And so overall, big picture, our total tax levy dropped about $2.1 million, and that means 84 cents per $1,000 of equalized value when we compare it to last year's tax levy. When we look at our operating revenue, just kind of the big pictures of where the changes are. And so you'll remember that we talk about local source and state source together, and that's because it's like a scale. And so as one goes up, the other one goes down. It's kind of a balancing act. It's not dollar for dollar, but the movement is similar. And so the big difference in that state source really this year is related to that 179 additional per pupil in our revenue limit. And we've been talking about that. That's been a big bump to us the last 2 years. And so that's the bulk of that $2.6 million there. Federal source you see is up about $1 million. Part of that's due to timing of learning what our allocations are for federal funds. Sometimes we know when we adopt the budget, sometimes we don't. The biggest piece of this $900,000 is really related to the CARES funds. And we've got $1.3 million included in this budget that you'll be adopting tonight related to CARES funds. Our Special Education Fund 27, you'll remember that's our transfer and what our expected contribution from the general fund to special ed to cover the costs are. And that's largely predicted upon what we think is going to happen in our special ed area for 2021. The bulk of that is coming in the salary and fringe area because that's where the bulk of our dollars are. And then our other revenue this year, again, that's really related to the technology leases. And so in the initial year of the lease, we have to recognize the total cost of all of those devices, and that capital lease revenue is the big change in that. And so that's something that as we do more leases, you're going to see that revenue, fluctuate from year to year based upon the dollars and the timing of when we're entering into those leases. When we talk about our revenue limit change, and this is really looking at that state number that I was talking about, we had a 1.9% increase in our revenue limit. That $179 per pupil that we talked about provided just over $2 million to our revenue limit. We did have a decrease in our 3-year average for students this year. And so because that was a decrease, DPI currently has a hold harmless exemption. And so those 64 less students provided a $653,000 hold harmless exemption for us in this budget year. And then just as a reminder, outside of the revenue limit is that per pupil categorical aid. And that was kind of put in place over the course of the last couple of years. And you can see in 2018-19, we were receiving $654 per pupil. And then in 19-20, that jumped to $742. It remains flat in 2021. But because we have 64 less students, that decreases that per pupil categorical aid just over $47,000 in our current budget. If we look over to our operating expenses, you'll see, some pretty big jumps in some of these categories. And I want to remind you that we were underspent in our 19-20 actual budget. And so that does make a big difference when you're looking at the actuals to what our budget is as far as by categories. And so, the biggest areas in the salary and benefits is that we had positions that went unfilled last year. And then this year, some of the changes are the additional staff that we needed to bring on due to our current instructional model. When we talk about contracted services in the 19-20 year, you'll remember our transportation budget was well underspent due to the contract language that we had with student transit, and we paid 18% of our transportation costs for about a quarter of the year. And so that's a big piece of why that number looks like it's increased so much versus if we had a full year in 19-20, that difference would not be so great. The other thing that's driving the contracted services number up is related to open enrollment out. So we had an increase of open enrollment out expenditures this year of about $1.3 million. And so that's, again, I'm sure it's related to the pandemic and some of our families seeking that 5-day a week. And so they are opting to attend other places. And we had talked about that we didn't know what that value was going to be. And we got that on October 15th. Our supply number, again, that looks like a really large increase. That's due to the devices that we leased. And again, that full amount is reflected there. And so that those device cost was just over $4 million. And so that's why you're seeing a big swing there. Capital, really the biggest differences are there. We were able to get some of our planned expenses done early last year, or I guess during the shutdown, some things that we would have done over the summer, we were able to complete before the end of the fiscal year. And so that's why you're seeing some of those differences. We had some tech work that we were able to accelerate as well and get that in the last year versus that needing to be done in this current year. Our sped costs last year, again, were down because we had 3 months that we didn't, have school and have our full costs. And then our debt and dues and other fees, really again comes back to the technology, the device lease payments, and those changes from year to year. One thing that we like to do this time of year too is just remind our board and our community about our referendum spending. And so, we had that successful referendum in November of 2016. And so that allows us to levy up an additional $5.86 million each year. So in the 1920 year, we spent about 1.8 on salary and fringes. We had about $1 million on class size reduction, 884,000 on technology and related to safety and security, and then our debt payment. You can see our planned expenses right now for the referendum in 2021 really revolve around regular salary and fringe of about $3 million. The reason that there's no class size reduction funds allocated is because with our new instructional model, we don't need to add staff to meet our targeted class size because all of our class sizes are well within that targeted board policy that we've got. And so we didn't allocate any dollars there at this point in time. Our tech expenses and our safety and security, we're estimating about $624,000 of our referendum dollars will be used there. And then our debt payment for debt that was issued during the referendum is almost exactly what it was last year. It's a couple $100. Well, we talk about fund balance a lot and we've been monitoring that. And so you'll remember that at the end of last year, we had a $7.7 million surplus related to the cost that didn't happen in that last quarter of the year. So that really brought our fund balance up to about 26.9%. The budget you're going to be adopting has a $1.7 million deficit. And so that does impact the fund balance a bit. The percentage is a lot different compared to last year. And that's really due to the fact that our expenses in Fund 10 are so much more than what we spent last year. And so that also, that calculation has, when you look at it in percentage, it looks different. And so nothing to be super alarmed about, but just wanted to explain why 1.7 million had such a big impact according to the percent. And I think my computer locked up, so give me just a minute. Okay, I must have clicked on something and it doesn't want to move. There we go. So overall, we wanted to just do a summary of all of the revenues by fund. And so you can see in the budget you're going to be adopting tonight, it's a total of 171.8 million. And it's broken down into the operating funds, which is where we spend a lot of our time in our discussion on. And we have our debt service funds, our food service funds, and then our employee benefit trust fund as well. And then if we look over to our expenses by fund, you'll see that our total expenses are about $174.4 million. Again, we break it into the operating budget and then debt service, capital projects, food service, and then employee benefits and our community service fund. So with that, I will take any questions that the board has.
Thank you, Abby, for the updates. We have on the agenda space for public comments, but we had no members of the public signed up to comment tonight. So it goes over to questions or comments from board members, and then when we're ready, we just need a motion to adopt the budget. Commissioner Lyons.
Abby, I'm looking at the operating expenses, and there's some pretty wild swings from the actual to the budgeted this year. And I'm just, you're only doing year-over-year comparisons. I'm wondering how much of this has really been a result of the pandemic.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Phil. I think last year the budget that was adopted, when we looked at all funds and even in the operating funds, I think it was around that 162 million. So I think that, it's not as big of that swing. So when it looks like we have a $15 million swing from our actual to our budgeted, I think if you go back to our actual number, we're probably in that $8 million range. And the biggest piece of that is really that technology and those capital leases that we entered into. That's like $4 million all by itself, because we have to gross up our revenue and gross up the cost of those devices, even though we're paying for them over 4 years. But the accounting rules require us to reflect all of the value of that lease and the devices in that 1 year. So it kind of disproportionately makes your budget look like it's up a ton because of that. And then you add a $7.7 million underspend on that. Once you add those two items together, that's, 11.5 million of that $15 million difference.
Then a follow-up, if I may. It's interesting that insurance went down so much. So I appreciate when costs go down, but I'm wondering, I would have thought that perhaps would have gone up.
Sure. And that's very notable. And it's our workers' comp insurance. So we have had a couple of really good years for workers' comp. And we instituted a new program probably back in maybe 14, 15. And we partner with our EAP program and really try to triage when somebody gets hurt and try to help get them back to work as quickly as possible and kind of reduce those workforce injuries. And so we have had some very good years. Unfortunately, the start of this year has not been so great for us. And so I don't anticipate that we'll see a decrease in our insurance in the workers' comp piece again next year, just because of some pretty large claims that we've already incurred in this year. But that is really the driver of that 106,000 of the insurance. It's all related to our workers' comp.
Commissioner Clements.
Abby, as you look at and consider our budget, are there particular areas where you think that we have vulnerabilities, given the pandemic, obviously with a lot of uncertainty as to how or when this will continue to play out? But are there particular things that you're watching as indicators of how the budget's going to unfold over the course of the rest of the term?
Yeah, it's an extra challenging year with the pandemic. I think the piece that I'm worried about the most really is falling in that salary and benefits area, because our staffing model is so different and we're just identifying new needs all of the time of what do we need and what does that look like. And so that's something that we'll continue to watch really carefully and really closely. We learned some things. Our staffing is usually pretty much set by the time school starts, with a few changes expected. And this year, I'll speak on behalf of Kay for just a moment, but it's like a never-ending puzzle that her and the HR department's trying to solve. And so even as recently as Thursday, we were kind of talking about positions. Are we going to be able to fill them? And what does that look like? And what are positions that we haven't even identified that we might need? And so I think that's going to be where our challenges are going to be this year, just because we need to meet our students. And with this environment, it's so different. That's really going to be where our challenge is. And then on top of that, we need to meet our students' needs, but are we going to be able to find staff or supports to be able to help our students and get that? So I think that's a piece that we're going to pay a lot of attention to, because that's an area that I think is going to fluctuate and be extra challenging for us this year. Some of the rest I'm not as worried about. I mean, our special ed fund costs could fluctuate as well, just because so much of that is staff related as well. And so some of those, as we have different models and different things, and how do we best meet our special ed needs? I think that, again, I would be concerned about the same thing in that area. The rest of it, I feel pretty good about. Obviously, bringing activities back in, did we budget enough or did we not budget enough? What does that look like? And that's really hard to predict because we just don't know what that's going to look like. So we did our best. But I think there's just a lot of areas this year that are going to be really hard for us, and we really kind of need to keep an eye on because it's such a different environment. It's not a great answer, but that's what I know right now. So,
Abby, when I looked through the executive summary, the device that I was reading on or something, when it talked about the amount of FTEs that we added this year, the decimal point was in a weird spot and I didn't understand what the number was. Can you just let me know how much FTE we've added this year? I know we have because we're covering, sort of two types of education right now.
Yeah, you know what, Tim, I don't have that number in front of me. I know we ended up in our budget, there's 1425 and some odd numbers. Marissa said that she can help us and grab it for me.
It's not like critical to have right at this moment. It's more of a curiosity point for me. And then that was just related to Josh's question. Would we expect some of the FTE to go down next year if assuming, in the situation where we would be sort of back to 5-day-a-week in-person school, would we expect some reduction in staff for next year since we've brought people in to cover this situation?
Yeah, I mean, I would expect that there could be some of our staffing this year is related to overloads and just the environment that we're operating in. And so overloads this year are very different than what they've been in the past, just due to our instructional model. I think when we look at the big picture, we always staff based upon students and students that are going to be in place. And so that's really the driving. So if we have less students again next year, then do I expect that number to look different? I do. If we have more students, are we going to look different? It looks like overall our budget this year is up about 6.5 FTE over what we had last year, just so you know. But that one is, I think you see ups and downs depending upon where your kids are and what levels they're at, and trying to be in compliance with that class size policy of the board as well.
Sure. Kay, you look like you've got something to add, so please do.
Thanks. Just to kind of piggyback on what Abby was saying regarding your question, if we were back to regular staffing for next year, I would anticipate seeing a drop in FTE just based solely on the fact that we wouldn't need to socially distance our students in classes, and so therefore we'd be able to put the regular amount of students in the classroom, and therefore we wouldn't have the same instructional model. So you'd be able to see a drop in FTE just solely based upon that alone.
Thanks, Kay. I didn't even think about that fact.
That's why I jumped in, Abby. I know you're just thinking about the numbers and, typical number reports. That's why it takes a team.
So many moving parts.
I know.
That's why we have a team.
Dr. Johnson?
Yeah, could you just speak to how many the staffing that did not go for field, and then if the staffing positions that did not go for field, if they were added to this budget, where would our numbers be?
Oh, I would have to look that up. We were working through a lot of the positions that we thought that we were going to fill at the beginning of the year, or even last year in our staffing model, and ones that haven't come up. But off the top of my head, I couldn't speak with confidence.
I guess the follow-up to that, though, is for those ones that you projected that potentially were going to happen, you didn't, and that didn't fill. Moving in the future, though, is the projection to fill those positions, or are we not filling those positions moving forward?
I think that's all going to be determined once we know what does next year look like, and that would really come through the staffing process. So I think there's a desire to fill some of them, I think, but it's all evaluated independently every single year based upon kids and classes they're taking, and just like he said, not socially distanced. And so I think that the intention would be that, hey, we had these positions, we're running the classes, it's a need, and then it would be determined at that point in time. So for this budget, we knew that we weren't going to fill them, so we went ahead and pulled them out because that would have just inflated our budget more.
So if there are no further comments or questions, I would look for a motion to adopt the budget as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We need a roll call vote.
Commissioner Harder,
Yes.
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Commissioner Nordin,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Zur,
Yes.
Commissioner Bika,
Yes.
Commissioner Clements.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. That is our agenda for tonight. We will be back again next Monday at our regular time. And I would hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Abby, and everyone else that works on the team with you to bring that to us. It's a big task every year, and we're really thankful for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Abby.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the Eau Claire Area School Board. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.